A little girl sat motionless in her wheelchair right in the center of what was supposed to be her perfect birthday party. She stared silently at the beautifully decorated pink cake in front of her, the candles flickering softly. All around her, dozens of invited guests laughed loudly, ate delicious food, and chatted happily, but most of them carefully avoided looking directly at her. The room was filled with colorful balloons floating against the walls, expensive decorations hanging from every corner, and a live violinist playing gentle, elegant music near the tall windows. Yet none of it seemed to matter to the child whose special day it actually was. Her tiny hands rested quietly on her lap. The bright smile she once wore had disappeared months ago. Tears threatened to spill from her eyes as she watched other children running freely, dancing without a care, and playing exciting games that she could no longer join. Across the crowded room, her powerful CEO mother was busy entertaining important business partners and investors, completely unaware that her daughter was quietly experiencing the loneliest birthday of her young life. Then, a single dad holding his young son's hand noticed the little girl sitting all alone. He walked toward her table with kindness in his eyes and asked a simple question that would quietly change everything. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness, inclusion, and second chances still matter in today's fast-paced world, please like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to Moments Hub for more emotional stories that stay with you long after they end. Victoria Lawson was 38 years old and one of the most admired and respected CEOs in the entire hospitality industry. She was elegant, highly disciplined, and relentlessly ambitious. Her luxury resort empire had made her famous for excellence, precision, flawless execution, and delivering unforgettable experiences. Investors trusted her completely. Magazines praised her visionary leadership. Competitors carefully studied her strategies. To the outside world, Victoria appeared to have everything: success, power, wealth, and prestige. But privately, her life had been painfully split into two different versions: before the accident and after the accident. 2 years earlier, her daughter Sophie had been a vibrant, energetic 8-year-old girl full of endless joy and life. She loved attending ballet classes, organizing birthday scavenger hunts, performing in school talent shows, and racing barefoot through their large garden while laughing uncontrollably with pure happiness. Then came that terrible rainy evening, a distracted driver, a devastating collision. Victoria survived with only minor injuries, but Sophie did not leave the accident unchanged. She suffered a severe spinal injury that permanently affected her mobility. From that day forward, Sophie's world became filled with endless hospital visits, strict rehabilitation schedules, specialist appointments, and many subtle heartbreaks that adults often fail to notice. Friends slowly stopped inviting her to active playdates and outings. School activities became complicated and limited. Social interactions started to change. And worst of all, Sophie began to feel like a burden to everyone around her. Not because anyone said it directly, but because children are incredibly observant. They notice pity in people's eyes. They notice hesitation. They notice when they are being quietly excluded. Victoria loved her daughter more than anything in the world, but her own grief had transformed her too. Instead of emotionally processing the pain, she responded the only way she knew how: through control, planning, and perfection. She poured enormous amounts of money into giving Sophie the best possible life money could buy: private tutors, world-class therapists, the most advanced adaptive equipment, beautiful bedroom renovations, elite medical care, and many lavish experiences, including tonight's extravagant birthday celebration. Everything was flawless on paper. The luxury venue, the custom dessert table, professional entertainment, highly skilled decorators, a carefully selected guest list, personalized gifts for every child, and even a specially designed birthday dress for Sophie. But what Victoria failed to notice was painfully simple. Sophie did not need more extravagance. What she desperately needed was real connection. As the party continued, Victoria was constantly pulled into important conversations with board members, investors, and influential guests who had attended partly out of obligation and partly for networking opportunities. She kept glancing towards Sophie from a distance, reassuring herself that everything was perfectly under control. But from across the room, the reality was very different. Sophie sat alone. A few children had initially approached her out of curiosity, but they gradually drifted away toward more physically active games and fun. No one intended to be cruel, but exclusion doesn't always come from malice. Sometimes it comes from simple convenience, and that kind of exclusion can hurt just as deeply. Sophie watched the other children racing excitedly between different activity stations, while she remained still beside her untouched cake. Her posture grew smaller, her face became quieter, and eventually she simply stared at the flickering candles with no expression at all. That was the moment Daniel Hayes noticed her. Daniel was 36 years old, a widowed single father who had come to the event because his 7-year-old son Noah was in the same class as Sophie. Unlike most of the guests, Daniel did not belong to Victoria's high-powered corporate world. He worked as a physical therapist at a rehabilitation center, spending his days helping people rebuild their confidence and lives after serious injuries. He deeply understood body language, the pain of isolation, and invisible emotional suffering. He recognized, immediately, what was happening to Sophie. Daniel gently held Noah's hand and walked over to her table. He smiled warmly and asked, "Mind if we join you?" It was such a small, ordinary question, but to Sophie, it felt enormous. She looked up with visible surprise, then slowly nodded. Daniel and Noah sat down beside her as if it was the most natural thing in the world. No pity, no awkwardness, just genuine presence. Noah immediately started showing Sophie his collection of silly drawings from his backpack. Daniel asked her about the cake design and her favorite movies. Within just a few minutes, something extraordinary happened. Sophie smiled. Not a polite smile, but a real, bright smile, the kind Victoria had not seen often in many months. From across the room, Victoria froze. At first, she felt confusion, then deep observation, and finally quiet guilt washed over her. She watched her daughter laughing harder in those 10 minutes with two near strangers than she had all evening surrounded by luxury and perfection. The realization hit her painfully. She had built a beautiful event focused on appearance while completely overlooking the emotional reality. Daniel and Noah didn't bring expensive gifts. They brought something far more valuable: inclusion, attention, and human warmth, things that money cannot buy or outsource. Later, when it was time to cut the cake, Daniel did something even more unexpected. He asked Sophie if she wanted help participating in the party games, not just as an observer, but as a real part of them. Using his professional knowledge as a physical therapist, he quickly reorganized several activities into seated and accessible versions that all the children could enjoy together. Suddenly, the games became collaborative. Children gathered around Sophie instead of drifting away. Laughter filled the room in a completely different way, not performative, but shared and authentic. Sophie finally became the center of her own birthday again, exactly where she should have been all along. Victoria felt tears rise in her eyes unexpectedly, not because Daniel had done anything grand or expensive, but because his simple kindness had exposed something deeply uncomfortable inside her. She had mistaken providing material things for truly understanding her daughter's heart, a painful but necessary distinction. Later that evening, after most guests had left, Victoria approached Daniel privately. For the first time in years, the powerful CEO who could intimidate entire boardrooms struggled to find the right words. She simply thanked him with sincere emotion. Daniel brushed it off gently and said, "Children don't need perfect circumstances to feel valued. They need to feel included, seen, and wanted." That sentence stayed with Victoria long after the party ended. In the following weeks, everything began to change, not just externally, but deep inside. Victoria started reducing unnecessary work commitments and became far more emotionally present with Sophie. She stopped obsessing only over solutions and started paying real attention to her daughter's emotional world. They spent peaceful evenings painting together, watching movies, talking honestly, and laughing more than they had in years. Victoria also launched a major inclusion initiative across all her company-owned resorts and event venues, focusing on accessible family experiences and adaptive recreation design. What started as personal guilt slowly turned into meaningful, lasting change. Because sometimes private lessons deserve to create public impact. Daniel and Noah gradually became a natural, recurring part of their lives too: weekend park visits, cozy movie nights, school events, and simple friendships built on mutual respect and kindness. Sophie began to flourish once again. Her confidence returned slowly but surely, not because her physical circumstances had changed, but because her environment had become emotionally safer. She no longer felt defined only by her limitations. She felt truly included in life again. Before we reach the ending, comment below. Do you believe small acts of kindness can completely change someone's day, or even their entire life? Months later, Sophie celebrated another birthday. This time it was a much smaller, intimate gathering at home. No luxury ballroom, no business guests, no extravagant distractions. Just close friends, genuine laughter, games that everyone could enjoy together, homemade decorations, and real warmth. This time, Sophie never sat alone, not even for a single moment. And Victoria finally understood a powerful truth that all her success had never taught her. You can spend millions creating beautiful moments and still miss what matters most. Because love is rarely measured by scale. It is measured by attention, by presence, and by making sure no one feels invisible. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to Moments Hub for more emotional stories about kindness, compassion, and second chances. Sometimes, changing someone's life begins with nothing more than a simple question: can we join you?